Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Board of Directors meeting and workshop agenda for Redwood Coast Transit Authority. So it's now Monday, June 24th at 1:30. We'll call the meeting to order. Can we get a roll call?
Here.
There we are, the light's working out. Well, at this time we'll have public comment. Any members of the public wish to say anything at all? Hearing no public comment, we'll move into the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I think we're just here we are.
Oh, wrong button.
Testing.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Director Folleman,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Chairman Berkowitz.
Yes. All right, let's move on to item 4A. Is that part of the consent agenda? It looks like it is. Yeah, okay. Let's move on to approval of the minutes of May 31st, 2019.
Motion to approve.
All right. Call the roll, please.
Director Folleman,
Yes.
Director Roberts, Director Gitlin,
Yes.
Chairman Berkowitz.
Yes. All right, let's move on to item number 6, discussion and adopt a resolution 2018-19-10, approving of the 2018-19 RCTA short-range transit plan.
Great, good afternoon, Chair Berkowitz and the board, thank you. I promised to be brief. We spent a lot of time on this item last month, and I appreciate the board's patience. We had a presentation and it ran a little long. That was our all-time record length meeting, if I remember right. Anyway, we'll be much more brief. I just want to touch on a couple of highlights because I didn't get too much of a chance to chime in on the plan last month. But we're really excited, your comments, and we also received some comments from your staffs. But relatively minimal amount of comments came in over the last month or so. So the version in front of you today is not substantially different than what you guys were presented last week. Some of the highlights, kind of going through it chronologically. The document touches on, it's basically a snapshot of the state of the system the way it is today. It's a transit system that's been losing ridership for the last few years, but has regained some momentum this year. We're up about 10% over last year, so hopefully that fiscal year 17-18 ridership low was about a low water mark that we can recover from. We had no technology in place just a couple of years ago, and today we're aggressively catching up on that. So we implemented paratransit scheduling software about a year and a half ago, maybe a little more than that now. So that was our first foray into technology, and that's been pretty successful. And we just had a pre-launch training session this morning on our latest technology, which is called Double Map, and it's a fixed route bus system software that'll do a lot of exciting things for us, some of which are even forward-facing to the public. So on our end, in the back end, we're going to get a lot of data that we never had before that we're just purely speculating on, or we'd have to go out and sample and hope it was an accurate sample, that it was representative sample, which is always the toughest part. So the double map works by every bus in the system has a tablet computer on board that the bus operators log into at the start of their work. They go out, their routes are all programmed into it, so if they happen to make a wrong turn or go off route, we're alerted. As they go to each stop, as people board, they'll key in the type of fare that they passenger boarded with, whether it's a pass or if they paid cash. So that will get keyed in there, and that then will automatically code the boardings and alightings by where they happen, which is invaluable if you're a transit planner. So I'm really geeked out on this. It's going to be exciting to have some real data to work with. So we are shooting for a July 1st implementation. We're super close after today, so it's just a week away. So that's really a new era in Redwood Coast Transit. So I can't say enough excitement about that. Some other unique highlights about this short-range plan. It was done with the market research element done first. So as this board knows, and thank you to Tamara from DNLTC, we had some market research money programmed the prior fiscal year, so we did that separately so that our plan could focus on the rest of the work and not have to do public outreach. They did a little, but not a lot. So the findings from the Shapiro market research study that was done in late 2017, those are cited here and there, and that's what they're talking about when they talk about the Shapiro report. The short-range transit plan contains our first Redwood Coast Transit mission statement, goals, and performance standards. That was part of the first half of the work. So it's been a few months since this board heard those, but they're located there in Chapter 3. And especially exciting is the performance standards, because they give us a set of metrics to measure each route against, which is really important if you have to make tough decisions like we've had to do just a year or two ago on some service cuts. This will give us a framework to do that, to evaluate how each route's doing. Performance data management, I touched on that, so that goes with the technology, but certainly the data we'll have for our next short-range plan in 4 years is going to be a lot more reliable and easily accessible than what we've been living with in the past, and including today, where it's really hard for me to even find out how we did yesterday, let alone easily produce reports on, year-to-date, month-to-date stuff. That's going to be at our fingertips with the double map system, so we're all really excited about that. It should, and that segues into my next note, with our managerial model being extremely lean, remote part-time contract management, having this data that I can access from anywhere is going to be a huge tool for us. So we are excited about that. I think it's important to optimize technology if you're not going to have a huge presence on the ground like we don't. Then we went into, the plan goes into some service alternatives, and rather than give us a prescriptive, well, you should do this year, add this this year, and then cut this the year after that, what we had the consultants do was produce a list of the projects with a ballpark pricing based on our pricing structure and our cost per hour of different things that we could add or we could cut depending on how the funding fortunes go in the future. One of the few recommendations for service expansion is what we're working on, and it's going to be another item later today. We're going to talk about our service to appeal to the students. We're getting that ready. We've been working on that last 2 days here on my visit. But beyond that, it doesn't recommend we expand much. It says that, this is a system that's probably expanded itself as far, if not further, than it maybe should have for our ongoing funding capacity, so that we might focus on doing what we do better rather than doing more of the same like in the past. We have a chapter 7, that is dedicated to setting up our CTSA, our Consolidated Transportation Services Agency plan. We accepted the designation a year ago this time and got some planning money to get started, and that's basically what you see here. is the consultants did some research on other successful CTSA programs. Specifically, we talked about travel training and ADA certification already with this board and predecessor board a year ago. So then they went through and developed a detailed model on how we should do that, how we could do that. Then we move into Chapter 8, which is a marketing plan, which is an area where we've always struggled a bit here and continue to. But I like the way the approach in the chapter realized that we don't have a lot of time on the ground, so it focused on some stuff we can do remotely and with relatively modest levels of commitment that can make a huge difference in our ridership and our public awareness. And then the financial plan, which is super important, finishes up the document, Chapter 9, that looks at our operating costs, historic and future projected, which many of which are somewhat set by because we're a contracted agency. So we're in the third year of a 5-year contract with First Transit right now. So we know what the bid costs are going to be for the next couple of years as bid back in at the end of 2017. Then it looks at our operating revenues, which have fluctuated quite a bit from year to year, sometimes frustratingly, other times happily. For example, this coming year that starts in a week, it looks good, but unfortunately, we can't always count on that. It's very much sales tax based, so it's a creature of both population and economic activity. Then midway through the financial plan, we look at the capital expenditures, and that sort of shines a light on one of our biggest problems that we can see over the next few years is nationally there's a shortfall in rural federal transit capital funding. So we are maximizing everything we can, but there's just not as much money out there for rural transit agencies as there are for our urban counterparts. And so the plan shows us, fortunately, my predecessor left us with a lot of the money from the 2006 Prop 1B measure that brought it's called PTMISEA, which is a very important capital source here in the state of California for transit capital projects and has been for 13 years now. Luckily, we didn't spend much of ours, just a little bit. So we're still sitting on a stockpile, but it's not growing because it's, that bond measure was a one-time deal for 10 years, it's over. So once we spend those PTMISEA funds, once we spend them down, there's no replacement really. We outline a new source that our CTA has not tapped before. It's another federal source called 5310, and the capital plan assumes we do successfully tap into and access some of those 5310 funds. They're specifically limited to dial-a-ride type transportation, so our plan and the plan shows that we should try to access those funds to replace the small portion of our fleet that does do the dial-a-ride. So it's 3 buses out of the 13. And there's actually a call for projects coming up. There was a webinar this morning that my partner, the great Dan Herron, covered for me, just to get ready for that application. So we'll probably be applying for a couple of replacement dial-a-ride buses with that. So that's, the general theme of that financial plan is we've built some reserves. We're in better shape than we were even through all the funding roller coaster of the last 2 or 3 years. We're in a better shape financially than we were 3-4 years ago, but the looming danger is we don't have enough money to replace the capital fleet, especially past 3 or 4 years once we've expired all that, expended, I should say, all that PTMISEA money. Then it looks a little dark in the future. So we're hoping at the state level or federal that some relief could come from a new funding source or an expansion of one of these existing federal capital sources. But at this point, there's no help, nothing concrete on the horizon. So the funding picture is a little dark because of that. At that point, I think I walked through the main document. So any questions or anything we want to talk about specifically?
Joe, one of the things we talked about at a prior meeting was the Klamath route and being able to adjust the time period, the time, pickup time, that would not conflict with the Yurok time period and therefore be able to get us some better ridership. Where are we on that?
We have, yeah, I remember that conversation. We have not done anything much with it so far. We're aiming for a service change on August 24th, I think, just before our next meeting to coincide with the starting of school this year. So I can take a look at that. If I remember right, the goal was for a morning commuter trip.
Yeah, I think what we
Different?
had decided is that we would interview some of the people that were riding on the Klamath bus, see what their ideal pickup time is. Because the current one for the tribe may not be convenient for them, but that's their only alternative, they think. And so if we could find out what their ideal times are and maybe see what we can do to accommodate that and then increase ridership.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for refreshing my memory on that. Okay, I will reach out to the tribe and see if we can get that process started, get their permission to go on board and do a survey of the riders as a starting point.
All right.
And put some questions together to see if there's a need that we could fill if we readjusted our service. Because right now, the 3 trips of the Route 20 that we have that go to the south, all 3 of them go all the way to Arcata. The first one's set for a morning Greyhound meet that goes to the Bay Area and also gets people down in the morning if they have classes or, unfortunately, it gets them there late. They can't really hold a traditional 8 to 5 job. But it gets them down there in time for that Greyhound bus going to the Bay Area and in time for most classes like at HSU or College of Redwood's, Fortuna. And then we have a midday trip that's pretty new. We just moved that a year ago to the midday from late night. And then we have a return trip, mostly return trip at like 5:30, 6 p.m. So we can see if there's any opportunity to move those around a little. Each trip down there is pretty costly because it takes like 3 or 4 hours round trip.
Right.
But yeah, we can get that started and see if there's any opportunity.
Okay. Other board member comments? No? All right. Let's go ahead and see if we can have a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second, Chairman, a reminder to ask for public comment too.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Do we have any public comment on this? Hearing no comment, we'll bring it back to the board. Thank you. All right. Let's call the roll.
Director Roberts? Director Gitlin?
Yes.
Director Ballman?
Yes.
Chairman Berkowitz?
Yes. Well, let's move on to item 7. Joe?
Right. Thank you. Okay, so this item is to bring us then to the here and now, our annual service change window that we usually do in July, but this year we decided to do it in August to give us time to adopt this plan for one thing. And then because specifically most of the changes, in fact, most or all the changes we wanted to do this year involve the schools, and they don't come back into session until August 24th or so, we decided we had a little more time, and thank you for granting us that. So the staff report goes through, in addition to this short-range plan, which is, a major effort and so many folks involved that were helpful and participated. But even beyond that, and sometimes in complement to the short-range plan, sometimes outside of the short-range plan, we do service changes about once a year anyway. And so page 1 outlines some that we've had to do or chosen to do over the last 3 years. So in 2016, we modified some of our local routes, especially moved time points around. That was one that a lot of people didn't notice, but it improved our on-time performance, helped out with driver breaks, got some of our buses out of some parking lots that they were in. Then in July 2017, that's when we had the funding loss and we had to We had to actually get out the knife and cut some service. So that was a difficult process, but that's when we cut Route 10, which used to also go to Klamath. So we had 10 and 20 that went that direction. And they were somewhat duplicative, although there were some differences in trip times. So when the 10 was cut, it had already seen its ridership drop like 50% or so by the time we ended up cutting it, but it was certainly not without some pain. We reduced our Saturday service a little bit at that time, and we also reduced the first half hour and last half hour of the Crescent City local fixed routes. Then a year ago, more of a subtle change last year was we just reallocated the late night trip that was meeting Greyhound and transporting a couple of people at most from Arcata. We moved that to midday, so it now fills in the schedule so you can go early morning, midday, or late afternoon going to the south. And at the same time, then we rerouted the regional routes so that they serve the College of Redwoods and high school campus on their way to and from Crescent City, so folks don't have to backtrack and transfer. So that's proven to be pretty popular with most people. So what we want to consider doing this year is also mentioned in the short-range transit plan. We feel that there's a market for student transportation that's out there for Redwood Coast Transit to seize and fill that role. The Del Norte Unified School District has a robust yellow bus program that they transport a tremendous amount of students to and from their campuses with. But they do restrict, they have some rules in place and some policies that restrict some of the local kids from here in town mostly. If you're within 2 miles of campus, if you're at the high school age, or 1.5 miles if you're at middle school level, they don't offer the free school buses. So within that niche, that happens to be the area we traverse most of the time anyways, right around in town here. So we think there's some market opportunity for us. So the service changes that we want to implement on Saturday, August 24th are as follows. We'd like to extend our Route 3, and I apologize, I don't have a visual. I wasn't able to put together a PowerPoint for this. But our current Route 3 that goes from downtown at the Cultural Center up 101, then up North Crest, currently only as far as the Senior Center. We want to extend that regularly scheduled all day long to the north, to at least as far as Pine Grove Elementary. There's quite what appears to me to be a good transit market area between the Senior Center and the edge of the community. And right now they have to call and request a deviation or a pickup, and that's tough. People don't want to do that. People prefer the spontaneity of an actual bus stop, which we do have the bus stops up there. We just don't go there unless someone asks to go, and that's been in place for a few years. We'd like to undo that and make the Route 3 go on every trip, which is once an hour, have it go hourly up to at least as far as Pine Grove. We're working with staff, our operations staff, and to figure out the best place to turn the bus around up there. But we've got a couple options to consider. We might just go all the way out to Standard Veneer, which is about a 1/2 mile past Pine Grove, but that'd be a good safe place to turn around. So we're kicking that option around. I expect it'll cut down a little on driver break time and recovery time, but it should increase ridership. Secondly, we want to augment our services to better appeal to high school students. And this was in the short range plan as one of the top recommendations. And the approach we want to take was outlined pretty good last month at the presentation of the SRTP. We'd like to, in the morning, just deviate what we do now with only modest cost increases, because in the morning our ridership's pretty light. So we're not impacting a lot of existing customers if we play some games a little bit with the routes to make sure they work a little better for the students. So what we've been planning towards is at the high school, breakfast is served at 7:30, and then main bell is just after 8. So we'd like to get students to the school, and a significant number of them do have breakfast at school. So we'd like to get options that get them there before 7:30, and then some options that also, because we only have 2 buses. So unless we want to increase our costs and really go shoot the moon for this, then we sort of need to break it down and get some of the buses there before 7:30, and then 1 or 2 more before 8 for the main bell, and see how that goes. So there's been one amendment just since this went to press. I was here yesterday, and then we met this morning with Fernando and Chuck, who are here from First Transit, our local brain trust. We've made a couple changes here already that we don't need to flip the 1 and 3 all day. We just need to run 1 twice in a row in the 7 o'clock hour to serve the school. We feel there's, I actually just had another follow-up meeting with the transportation director at the school district today. He's been very helpful working with us on this to make sure we don't trample and get in their way and compete with them on students, and just focus on the ones that by their policy they don't serve very well, which are the ones that live just inside town here, but a little too far to walk. So we're working on that. We probably will start a couple of the routes about 10 minutes earlier than we do today. Today we start service at 7 o'clock straight up. And in order to make this work and get kids picked up from their neighborhoods and then through the system to the school before breakfast, we'll need to start about 6:50 or so on the 2 routes. And that should work pretty good. We plan on, we feel there's market in the apartment complexes behind Walmart, and we feel there's some market in some other spots in the downtown and west side area. And so that'll be what we design the route deviations to do. We really don't have to deviate too much. So Route 2 would be one of the ones that starts 10 minutes earlier, and it would start behind the Walmart at Summer Park, excuse me. And then Route 3 would also have a trip that would start up on the north end, up by Pine Grove at 6:50, then come into town, and then do, it becomes Route 1 to serve the school. So that would get those groups, both of those groups would have an option to get there before breakfast to serve. So that the total cost of that is probably, and that's changed a little, we're probably looking at, no, it's about right, about 20 extra minutes of running time plus fuel each school day. So we're talking probably about $20 per school day for those morning changes. So it's very, very subtle. In the afternoon, I don't think it's going to work so easily, mainly because we don't want to alienate or impact negatively our existing riders, which are much more active at the 2-3 p.m. hour than they are at 7 in the morning. So we propose maybe one minor deviation. The Route 2 will deviate and then hold up at the school about 5 minutes so that it can be available at 3:15. The bell rings at 3:10, so even that's pushing it, but we're going to try to get out of there at 3:15. And that Route 2, if you can picture it in your mind, it's a clockwise loop around the community. So that for the kids that can get out quickly, they'll be able to board the bus and get home, for example, to the area behind Walmart in about 5 minutes. So it'll be really fast and efficient for them. And then it'll continue on. It becomes a Route 4 if they live downtown or out towards Birch Track. But we do need a tripper, so we need to add another bus in the afternoon in order to make this work, because a lot of, we have people that are already traveling that'll be impacted if we start doing too many deviations with the existing route. So we suggest a new route that would pull the yard and start at the high school at about 3:25. I'd like to name this route 300, but whatever the board wants to call it. 300 is just the tripper number series we use down in the Bay Area. But this would start at 3:25 at the school, and then serve the markets that we picked up in the morning pretty well, and make sure they have a good experience on the ride home. So that would, we have it going south down El Dorado, then looping through the west side and downtown, and then head out to North Crest, which is another market that, the far North Crest, not the area around Walmart. So that'd be about an hour of work. By rule, we have to pay our operators 2 hours at least when we call them out. So we may have it do a few more minutes of work after It's an hour of scheduled service. We may have it, if another need emerges, we could add a few minutes to it, being as we're paying it to be out there for 2 hours anyway. But as I see it right now, it's about an hour piece of work. So it'd be done by about 3:30, or 4:30, excuse me. And that would be it. So then the total cost of those two things, so the morning deviations, which are basically just starting both buses around 6:50 instead of 7 a.m., and then the afternoon trip or route, we're looking at about an annualized cost of $16,200, and that's assuming 180 days of school. Ridership, well, it's hard to say, but it's going to go up. It's just a matter of how much. One of the reasons that we're starting focus this year with the high schools, and you don't hear about middle schools in the staff report, is because I want to make sure we can handle capacity-wise. I don't want to get us in over our head because we don't have big buses like, in Marin County. We have cutaways, and we're a small staff, so we don't have a lot of extra drivers to throw at it. So we want to do the first leg, phase one is the high school, see how that goes, make sure we have capacity for that. And then as we're planning next summer, maybe we could expand it to middle schools. But we wanted to start with the, what seems to be the easiest victory, which would be the high schools. And see, that may fill the buses right there. We may not have any more capacity, depending on how we do with these markets.
All right.
Joe, is there a target minimum of increased ridership from these new routes that we're aiming for?
Yeah, I think if we look at our short-range plan, our fixed route performance metric is, I want to say it's like 12 riders per hour. I think we'll crush that.
Okay.
But that is per bus. So, if all four, I don't think there's any of all four of them touch the schools. Well, let's say 2 or 3 of them do, then we would need, in the afternoon, we would need to get at least 36 boardings per afternoon to meet the metric if we have 3 buses going over there. But yeah, we would measure it. So if it's not doing well, which would surprise me, but anything can happen. If it's not doing well, we'll bring constant updates to the board every few months. And now that we got double map, we should actually have some availability of some easy to get data on how the system's doing. So yeah, we'll bring updates as we look towards next year. If we're doing really well, we'll probably be bringing you updates that we're having too many people on this one bus, that we're going to have to move this bus over or add a few minutes of service here and there. So if we're having success, one thing I've learned from doing these trippers, this will be the fourth transit system that I've done school trippers with. You really need to be flexible and dynamic because every August is different and the market can change day to day even. So you don't really know until the kids have settled in until about a month into it. So we should know when we meet again, we're not going to know. We're going to say, oh wow, we've been running for 2 days and so far, we're all still employed and everybody's alive, but we won't know for sure until probably the end of September how this is going. So when we meet maybe in October, we'll be able to give you guys a good summary of where we're at and if we're having capacity problems or if it's just, if the routes aren't doing well, we'll know by then.
Joe, you probably already answered this just by your last sentence, but are you able to quantify the impact, the financial impact, how it benefits the budget on these changes? Or is this just a good faith estimate that you've made some cuts and you already have a deficit, you already have a positive surplus there? Are you able to quantify these numbers and with these changes and how this will impact the budget?
Yeah, I can quantify the cost. That's pretty easy to project. So the $16,200, we can depend on that. That's what we're planning on spending. What's unclear is how well it's going to be consumed by the students. So if their rider, because you may recall, and my bad for not mentioning this, one of the reasons that we're so excited about doing this project is the students are going to be able to ride free, and then we're going to get backfilled with that grant money. So if we get 25,000 student boardings in the year, we're going to move $25,000 from that grant into our fare box account. So the trippers that I've had that have been successful in some of my other communities have had more than 100% fare box. That means they've made money, which is almost very rare in American transit because of our land use issues. But if we fill buses and they're each at $1 a head, these trippers could actually come out to be cost neutral, but I don't want to guarantee that, so.
No, I know you can't, and this
Yeah,
is
it's hard to
looking into
tell.
a crystal ball, but give us you know, the boardings are again, it's hard to predict, but what would be a good faith estimate on the low end? That you would be disappointed unless you realize a certain threshold of new riders, student riders. Could you just go on the low end, so we have a reasonable expectation?
I would be disappointed if we don't get 100 total boardings per day from this,
Okay.
which would be, you know, could be 50 in the morning, 50 in the afternoon, although some places I've noted the afternoon, we have more kids in the morning because maybe they get a ride with parents or whatever. So, yeah, I'd love to see us, I'll be disappointed if we don't get 100 additional boardings that we don't have today per school day, yeah.
Joe, what would you be doing to promote this?
We are going to, good question, Bob. We are going to, as always, marketing's where we struggle here. But that said, we've got a plan. So we've already, thank you to Chuck and Fernando, we've already got banners made for the 4th of July parade. We're going and the guys have got us a spot in the parade, and we'll be flying the banner that at one of the banners advertises the program. So that's going to be the first, I think, the public are actually going to see that students ride free, because that's just next week at the 4th of July parade. Concurrently with that, we've got open space on the sides of our fleet that's not sold from the ad revenue program. So we're going to work with the sign company and make some signs. We've already got the design, the college has been helping with it. So we're going to promote, and we'll stick those on for the fall, so summer and fall. So we'll have, the buses will advertise the program themselves on the side. And then we're going to do some cost-effective Facebook advertising. I want to get on the radio show in the morning that talks about current events. I got to make that connection and get invited, of course, which might be something that the board can help with. And then we can reprogram our electronic message signs on the front of the buses to pitch the program to. So I think the combination of those things is what we want to get together. I talked to Derek at the school today, and he's going to look into it. He didn't know of one big back-to-school night, but those events are awesome for tripper people like us. So I'm going to work with him to see. He thinks there might be one for the incoming freshmen, and that would be a great one for us to attend. It might end up, maybe Chuck or Fernando have to attend it if I can't be in town. But he's going to let us know. He didn't know of, unfortunately, of a one big event that kicks off the school year. But we'll work with them to see if there's any smaller ones that we can be at.
If they still have a daily bulletin on the schools, you might just want to
Yeah.
get into the school and get on that daily bulletin, especially the first couple of weeks of school.
Yes, that'd be good.
Joe, when you talk about getting on a radio program, are you talking about KFUG? Because I know that they've got a lot of community-themed. Okay. Well. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, Joe, there's two shows, KCRE and KPOD FM, and I think the one's at 7:25 in the morning, the other one's at 8:30 or 8:40. So, and if you need some assistance, give me a holler, and I'll put you in touch with the folks over there.
Okay.
We'll get you in there. It's just waiting, until an opening comes up.
Yep. No, that sounds great. I appreciate that help because, yeah, that's in the small community. That'll go further than a lot of other things we can do. So the summer youth pass thing, I think we're just going to, rather than say it's a new pass, we're just going to get the word out that the kids ride free so they can
Yeah.
come in. They don't need any sort of fair media necessarily. They just need to be a kid. And that'll be easier because we don't have time to really pull together a separate fair media that quick because it's already the end of June.
Joe, on the morning package of changes and deviation, you have 20 minutes of extra time, so that would work out to about $60 an hour. And then on the afternoon package, you have 2 hours of extra running time that equals $70. So why the disparity in costs?
The morning, our cost per hour that we pay for operations is $23.65. We should memorize that. We talked about it so many times today. So a third of that is only about, right, $10, but fuel. So I just added $10 worth of fuel because these buses are going to be, that you have to add that on top of the labor cost. So the $20 for a third of an hour in the morning includes fuel. So it's like $10 worth of labor plus $10 worth of fuel. The afternoon, the labor at $23.65, 2 hours of that's about $50 plus $20 for fuel. It's probably a little high, but it's better to guess conservative. So that's where I got those figures from.
You anticipating the higher cost of fuel effective July 1st? And I know it's 6 cents a gallon on gasoline. I'm not sure what it is on diesel. Had you heard what the increase on diesel is?
No, I'm not sure.
Okay. All right.
So the one thing, if I could wrap my presentation on this item, is we still could use board direction on the Saturday thing. So initially, we thought we were going to get the LC Top grant, which pays for the student free fares. We were going to try to get that approved by Caltrans to paying for some operations so that we could reinstate the second bus on the Crescent City locals on Saturday that we reduced back 2 years ago. Then Caltrans ultimately rejected that idea and just said, hey, no, we'd rather fund the student thing for the whole thing. This thing doesn't reduce enough air pollution to meet their formulas. So then we brought that back to you guys. You guys approved an amended application, and we did that. So the thing that's still hanging out there is, do we want to pay out of our regular budget the funding of $20,000 a year approximately to add the second bus back in on Saturdays, which basically would give it the same level of service as Monday through Friday, which is unusual. So I spell that out in here, and I don't recommend we do that this year. But I wanted to see if the board felt passionately about it. I'm willing to try it. It's just, it'll draw our reserves down by 20 or not. So it's, it doesn't project to increase ridership a lot. The current coverage, Route 2 and 4 run all day on Saturdays, flip-flopping back and forth. And the 2 covers about the same territory as the 1, which doesn't run, and the 3 doesn't run. So the areas that aren't covered are North Crest, which is Route 3, so that doesn't run. I mean, you can get, if you are going somewhere near Washington, you can get off the 2 and get there. Or somewhere down by where North Crest meets 101, you can get off in that area from the 2. So it's harder to use, but there is service there. There aren't many areas that have nothing. Some people have to walk further, like if you live over by the coast, to get to the route. There's that area around like H Street that's further away from service because just the one loop route, and it's offset by about 6 blocks there. So my recommendation is to hold off on it and build our reserves a little more and maybe re-look at it in a year. But I'm open to what you guys feel about that.
All right, have any more discussion on board?
You want board reaction on Saturday service now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to discuss this.
I don't think that's part of the agenda. I don't think we can discuss and adopt it because it's not it's a specific item that's not on the agenda.
All right, so you want to put it on the next agenda for...
No, I think we left if you look at the recommendation, I think it leaves it open enough because we're not doing this by reso or anything. So it leaves it open. If you guys want to resurrect that service and reinstate it, we could. Yeah. It's just not, staff doesn't recommend it. I don't strongly recommend not doing it either, but yeah. So no, I think we could if you want. I just wanted to check you guys' pulse on this because it sort of happened weird. You guys wanted to do it and we wanted to do it because we thought we had a grant to pay for it about 3 meetings ago. And we found out, no, we don't have a grant to pay for it. So if we're going to do it, it'll just have to come out of our general operating budget. So that's where we're at now.
So do you need a specific resolution before we can discuss that, or you want to
just direction, if you guys want to move ahead with the school service changes and not the Saturday, or both? That's what I need.
Okay. Any input?
I would like to ask on the Saturday ridership, as far as prior to us eliminating that, was there much difference in the ridership?
It's a good question. Do we have any knowledge of Saturday ridership from,
I would imagine
2 years
probably
plus
the
ago
time you
versus
see
not?
a lot of ridership is if the first happens to fall just prior to the weekend.
yeah, that would do it. We'd have to research that more. Not that we've noticed, but it probably dropped off a little.
Any other?
Well, we're talking about two issues here. We're
Yes.
talking about kids ride free. That's one issue. You want feedback on that. And the other one is Saturday service.
Close. Modifying the service on school days as
Okay.
described as we just walked through. So yeah, that's the
Yeah.
kids' part. So the modifications to the school day service, and then do we want to reinstate Saturday or not?
You know, I'd like to know, what's the word I'm thinking of, I'd like to know the ridership on Saturday that would be affected. I know it's not what the weekdays, and probably Sunday exceeds that too. But can we get that at the next meeting?
Yeah, we can do it the next meeting.
Yeah, but I would support the changes accommodating the kids that we talked about in an effort to develop an additional ridership. What your low estimates would be 100-plus new kids. Is that what I heard you say?
That's the goal, yep.
That's it. So I'd like to see that, see if it works. And that would be my support. The other one I'd like to hold in abeyance until such time as we know just how many people are affected by the Saturday service, or whatever decision we make. So I'd like to see that on the next agenda.
So at this time, I'd like to call for a motion on discuss and approve on item 7.
Move to approve the August 2019 service changes and implementation date.
My second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment? Yes.
I'm Tamara Layton, the Executive Director of the Local Transportation Commission. I have just been having trouble following the conversation, and I'm not clear about the staff recommendation. If the staff recommendation is to not make changes at this time and the board wants to make changes in spite of the staff recommendation, I'm not clear on that. And
Me
so,
too. I heard that very clearly. I thought we had some kind of a split feeling that we support one and maybe hold off on another, the recommendation, and then I'm seeing a motion to implement, discuss, and approve the service changes and implementation date. And I'm a little confused whether we're doing one or both.
That's part of my comment is I'm unclear about the staff recommendations, and I've been following this topic. I've read the document at length and in detail. So if I'm not clear, I expect that others may not be clear. And then the other concern that I'd like to express is dipping into reserve funds with our history of unstable transit funding, because what tends to happen if transit loses funding in the long run is then we end up cutting services, and this yo-yo of yes and no services really harms the system in the long run. Folks need to be able to count on the transit services that they get used to, and so I think making changes in the schedule, especially if it's not the staff recommendation, that putting something there, taking it away, putting it there, taking it away, overall makes the system seem unreliable to the public,
Yeah,
and
makes sense. Yeah.
I'm concerned about that.
I agree.
So those are my comments.
All right, Joe, can you clarify exactly what we're voting on?
Well, I think, if I could,
Sure.
yeah. I made the motion with the intent that we were adopting, realigning routes 1, 2, and 3 to serve Delmar High School in the morning and afternoon, to start the buses 10 minutes earlier in the morning, and to create a PM tripper route beginning at Delmar High School, providing solid return service to students. I didn't make a motion with the intent to approve any Saturday service change, or certainly not make a motion to dip into any reserve funds. I agree with the director that we need to keep those, that reserve there. And she's right about that. We need to have a consistent, reliable service.
Well, it's clear right here in bold print, service change not recommended for August 2019. And that's the Saturday service, restoration of Saturday service is not recommended. It's right here. So the only thing we're voting on is the service routes and the high school.
Tamara, are you okay with that? Is that in accord with what you're thinking?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to, I guess, unnecessarily put myself forward in your meeting. I just, in going through the agenda item, I wasn't clear, and so I wanted to make sure that the board is clear. I'm not a part of this decision. It's a board and staff working together decision. It was confusing to me, and I wanted some clarity.
Well, I had the same confusion. And I see it, Chairman Berkowitz has pointed out that Saturday service would not be affected by the current motion and the second, based on what I'm hearing, and in accord with staff recommendation. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah. So I'm clear on that. We're not going to discuss Saturday service at this time until we have additional information. I'm clear on that. Perhaps at the next meeting when we can make a cogent, intelligent decision based on numbers. So there is no interruption of service possibility there until we actually have the item agendized, hopefully in the next meeting. So I'm good with voting on what the motion and the second implies, speaks to, and going from there. I think I'm clear on that now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Can we call for the vote?
Director Roberts?
Yes.
Director Fallman?
Yes.
Director Gitlin?
Yes.
Chairman Berkowitz?
Yes. All right, let's move on to item number 8. Adopting resolution 2081? I don't think so. How about 2018 maybe? 1911, approving 2019-20 RCTA budget and CTSA budget.
Is that a typo?
I think that is.
It's 2018.
If we're still here in 2081, we're gonna have a party. That'll be good. Okay, sorry about the typo on that. Yes, this item's been before you for twice already for previews and discussions, so now it's time to adopt the budget. We're about as late as we can be in this process. But that was to allow the short-range plan to run its course. So the highlights of the budget, you've heard me talk about this, so I'll be super brief. We increased funding for our maintenance and operations contract, and that's mostly for increased labor costs that are part of the First Transit bid in 2017, and most of those are to comply with the state's minimum wage laws. We have fares at the SRTP projected level, which matches with actuals for this year, but we anticipate with ridership growing that we might actually eclipse that mark. But that matches the SRTP projections that were just adopted. We have another potentially active capital project year. For sure, we have a 2-bus order that's already on order, so it rolled over from last fiscal year. So we have 2 buses coming later this summer or early fall. But we have grants in the tunnel applications out there for up to 5 more, which we may get nothing, we may get partial of that, or possibly, if we're super lucky, we may get them all. And they could move fast enough that we might end up being able to order them this fiscal year coming up, so that's why I included them in the budget. So that's like a best case scenario. Specifically, if you look towards the bottom of your draft budget, the first line under capital expense says replacement bus, 2 buses, 5339, and PT-MISEA. Those are the two we have on order, so those are going to happen for sure. That's a rollover from last fiscal year. But the line underneath that's a placeholder for the grants funds we're asking for. So that's, hopefully we'll get that, but we'll see. Time will tell. It includes $20,000 in PT-MISEA facility money. We can change our expenditure plan on PT-MISEA, and I think I will bring a slight change to you guys at the next meeting, because we have it divided into bus replacements, facilities, and bus stops currently, and some other funding has come along that fits the bus stops better, so we'll probably want to move that into bus replacement to maximize the rest of that money to the greatest extent possible. But we put $20,000 in the budget for an emergent project. We've done that the last couple of years. This could potentially be used for some design costs for a major investment on the facility, or it could just be for some minor capital improvement projects around the yard. We increased the transit management line item to reflect the recently approved extension. That does not reflect, next month we're going to be, if you guys recall, in the short range plan, chapter 7 was the CTSA chapter. So when we come back in a couple months and meet again, there'll be an amendment to the first transit contract that'll probably be on there to add work to them, and potentially an amendment to my contract to add a little more work for us, to add on those new tasks. So that's not in this, so that'll require an amendment. And then we again guessed high on the fuel costs, because that's become really, to me, it's a good way to go, because it gives us a little buffer if the fuel costs don't spike, but if they do, then at least we have enough money in that line item to hopefully cover it all. So that's it for the budget highlights. Any questions?
Okay.
I'll make the motion to adopt Resolution 2018-19-11, allowing the 2019-20 RCT budget and RCTA CTSA budget.
All right, do we hear a second?
Seconded?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment? Hearing no comment, we'll come back to the board. Let's call for the question.
Director Fallman,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Director Gitlin,
Yes?
Chairman Berkowitz.
Yes. All right, we'll move to Resolution 2018-19-12, approving authorizing supplemental of FY 2019-20 RCTA Transportation Development Act, TDA claim. Joe?
Thank you, Chair Berkowitz. This item's our routine item. Each year, this time, we, usually about a month ahead of this, we approve our TDA claim, which is the actual mechanism that we use, the transit agencies use to get their TDA LTF funding through the local Rural Transportation Planning Agency. So this will allow us to get our TDA and STA, which is State Transit Assistance, funding for next year. The highlights this year is a notable natural increase in the available TDA LTF, which stands for Local Transportation Fund. That's the largest pot of the TDA. That increased this year due to the strong economy. And then plus, bullet 2 talks about it's a reprogramming of surplus TDA LTF from like a year and a half ago. And that accrues when the economy is really robust, more than anticipated. So, for example, we're doing our 1920 TDA claim today based on projections that the county auditor comes up with, which are usually pretty accurate, but they tend to take a conservative approach. So some years comes in higher than that. So that creates, when that does happen after it's been audited through the local transportation commission, then the commission makes that available on a one-time basis as a surplus from the prior year. So there's some of that in this year's claim that really helps us as well. But we can't count on that each year, because if the economy hits a road bump and dives, The actuals could come in under the original projections too, and then there's no balance and there's a negative balance. So it goes both ways, but in a good year like this, or actually a good year like 2 years ago, it creates a little surplus that we're allowed to claim. So this year's a good one, and that was from the strong economy 2 years ago. And then the last bullet is positive news. The state transit assistance funding keeps growing, and this is a byproduct of the SB1. If you guys remember, it withstood challenge again last fall. But just 2 or 3 years ago, we were around 100,000 a year for our state transit assistance allocation for Redwood Coast, and now we're up to about 279. So it's nearly tripled. So that couldn't have come at a better time, considering we've seen a diminished commitment on the federal side. So we're not getting as much federal operating money as we used to, but the STA has risen, so that's come to help us out. So this claim makes that happen. It contains a lot of required information. You'll see this is our first claim that actually includes one project called the CTSA project. So that we're claiming our limit of 5% of the LTF money for the CTSA projects, which were outlined in Chapter 7 of the plan, and include ADA eligibility determination and transit travel training. So the max we would spend on those programs is shown here on the third page of the claim. It's like $32,673. And
All
any
right.
questions?
Questions on that? No? All right, do I hear a motion for approval of the resolution?
Move to approve Resolution 2018-19.
Second.
All right.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. All right, yes, thank you. Public comment, please? No public comment? All right, let's move it back to the board. Call a vote.
Director Fallman,
Yes.
Director Gitlin,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Chairman Berkowitz.
Yes. Okay, Joe, operations report, First Transit.
You get a break from me, Mr. Chair. This will be Chuck Clarkson, who'll be presenting the First Transit Ops report.
Good afternoon. As Joe's mentioned a couple times about our new technology, we have our double map is getting implemented. The goal will be to have it up and running by next Monday. We had a good training session. We'll be getting the drivers up to speed on it this week. And that is going to help our tracking. It's going to help our customer base to be able to see where buses are at and to know when, they can look on their app from their home and say, I've got 10 minutes to get to the bus stop before the bus gets there. That's the kind of information that they'll have, and we're pretty excited about what that's going to provide us. I believe the last time I was here, I also mentioned DriveCam, which is a program that First Transit provides to all of its locations. It is a safety mechanism of a camera that if there is anything outside of the normal parameters of the operating of the bus, it triggers the DriveCam and it captures the previous 8 to 12 seconds and the post 8 to 12 seconds. That is then uploaded to a website. It goes to DriveCam. DriveCam grades the event. They then put it on their website. We come in the next morning and we're able to watch whatever was captured and are either able to coach a driver who may have, had a misstep, or gives us an opportunity to bring someone in and say, you had a close call and you handled it perfectly. You did really well, and to give them kudos. So it works both ways, but that's going to help our safety coaching and to keep things moving forward in that regard. We went a long time without any road calls, and I told you about one last time, and unfortunately I got to tell you about another one this time. We allowed our tech to take a 2-week vacation, which means everything breaks down while he's gone. So we did have some maintenance issues that were worked through. Nick is back today and getting us back on track. But we did have one just outside of town up at the viewpoint on last chance grade. Had a vehicle pop a radiator hose and dump the coolant. And, so we had to get that towed and get another bus up there. We We're about 20, 25 minutes late on that route by the time we got another bus up there to them. Excuse me. Also, very seldom I have to tell you about an accident with our system. I'm pretty proud of our safety record, and I still am, because the accident wasn't our fault. This happened last Friday afternoon. Our bus was stopped, and the driver wasn't even in the bus. He was helping a passenger to move off the bus when a car misjudged their distance from us, and fortunately it was just the mirror that we have to replace. But it does go in our books as a non-preventable accident, and unfortunately I don't get to keep bragging that we haven't had any accidents in a while. Bring up to speed on our hiring, we still could really use a couple more drivers. We have several, we had a group, a bulk of about 4 applicants that came in, and then for various reasons we weren't able to hire them. That's a common occurrence, that there's something in their background that disallows us from being able to hire them. So right now our queue's kind of empty. We're hoping that we can generate some more interest in the driving for us. We will have buses in the 4th of July parade, and we're going to have a now hiring banner on the side, along with the free rides for the students banners that'll be on the buses. Fernando will drive one, I'll drive another one. I'm making him drive the big one. So that's an effort that we will be making here, this next week, to try to keep getting the word out that we're hiring. We need some more drivers. Since we last met, I made a trip to Cincinnati for general manager training, and that was interesting, helpful. I'm glad I had the opportunity to go, and the crew did a great job of keeping things going. It was, like they don't need me. It ran fine. But and then last thing, to just let you know something I just learned today, that next week our regional director of safety will be on site to take a look at us, talk with us, encourage us and challenge us, and keep us moving forward in safety. So, are there any questions or anything I can clarify?
I got a quick one. With regard to the drive cam, how much storage do we have on that website? And how long
I don't know.
How long does footage get to stay on there then before it gets deleted?
It gets archived after a certain amount of time.
Okay.
So we would just have to go through this application process with DriveCam. But we also have the ability to download and
Right.
keep, if we have a,
Store that in-house on a server if you needed to. I mean, I don't.
we can download and keep it on site, which we sometimes do just for training purposes. If we have a driver's meeting and we've had somebody who's done something extremely well, that's really cool to be able to say, watch this video and see what they did, see how they handled this, see how they followed our Smith system keys. So we have that ability.
Chuck, was it 2 meetings ago? You made a profound impression on me about a looming problem with morale and our poor salary schedule. It hasn't been brought up again. We haven't seen it on the agenda. However, you are hiring. I still think it looms as a big problem. You're talking about a major piece of equipment. Someone is tired, they're overworked, they're working double shifts. What about this board addressing the salary schedules, Mr. Chairman? I think at some point we're sitting in an impending surplus, what you shared with us, and as we kick this thing forward, we have a little money to work with. I would rather incentivize this so we don't have as much trouble hiring and retaining drivers, and at the same time, I think it's a real safety issue. So we have those extra drivers available. So someone doesn't have to, is this the time to have this discussion?
No, but next meeting will be, so.
Yeah, I'm saying for the next meeting, yes.
Yeah, no, we're going to agendize it, and first is putting a presentation together for the August meeting. So,
Okay.
yeah, we just talked about it this morning on a conference call with Mark and Chuck, and they're going to bring us some options in August, along with the CTA. We have to amend the contract.
And then we'll have a better, clearer picture on our surplus. So how much money we're actually working with as we move forward. to have this discussion for the next meeting or two. I'd like to invite the public to weigh in on this and perhaps even get some of our riders in there to see if they feel safe on our routes. Who knows, we might attract a driver or two out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think your impression one was a profound one on me. I don't want to drop
Yeah,
this.
and I still feel just as strongly as I did then. It's just a matter of timing and being able to give a really cogent recommendation to the board, and when you don't have quite as much on your plate as you've had on this day.
I would also like to ask, is First Transit encouraging drivers to attend our meetings? Since I've been attending, I have not seen any drivers or staff attending the meetings other than you and Fernando. So I was wondering if we're encouraging.
It's not something I've addressed, no.
Okay, because I think it would be good to have driver input once in a while at the meetings as well.
I guess keeping in that vein, do you keep like just one of these agenda packets in-house for people to, I mean, I can't imagine somebody's so unbusy that they'd have to read one of these, but just provide that access to people.
To access to the drivers?
Yeah, just keep one of these packets on site.
Yeah, I can do that. I have not been doing that. They've had the same access as the general public, but,
Yeah.
And I do know that in the past, I don't know if we're still doing the recordings or not, but I know in the past that some of the employees have watched the board meetings on video.
Chuck, I want to commend you again for that great trip that you provided for Klamath and all of the different venues that we were able to visit and introduce a lot of people to the Klamath and Klamath businesses. So it was a very, very good trip.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So any other under First Transit? All right, let's go to transit technology update.
I spared you guys the written update, but we're going to have a lot to update on our table, our little matrix. So we'll bring that back in August, and we'll be able to check off the double map implementation, which is probably the biggest deficiency in the transit spectrum that we've always been dealing with here. So that'll be, by the time we meet again, that'll be up and live. We launched the Token Transit, which is the mobile phone ticket purchasing app. It's been a soft launch because we haven't had time to promote it much, but we launched it about, maybe it was the 1st of May. So it's been going for a couple months now. We've sold maybe each month we get a weekly report, but we've sold anywhere from like no tickets to maybe like $10 worth. So a few people have heard that we do. I think it's become like, at this point, we don't have any car cards or anything, so it's just word of mouth, like, oh, you can do it on your phone. But we're going to be pushing, so by the time we meet again, there'll be car cards that the vendor provides. We just had to send them a logo, and they actually got them to me this week. So we'll get some made and posted in the buses, and that should spike that a little bit and get it going for folks that want to buy their passes and store them on their phone. Then they just flash the phone to the operator for a visual verification, and they can ride just like a paper ticket. So that was launched a couple months ago. So we're catching up to the rest of the world. There's still other projects in the matrix, and I'll bring that back as an official staff report update next meeting.
All right, let's move on to announcements. Does anyone have any announcements they wish to make? Hearing none, we are adjourned until next Monday, the August 26th at 1:30 meeting.